Good morning. My name's Chenelle Hitchcock and I'm the author of a book called From Broken to Beautiful, How to Be Calm, Happy and Slim. And you recently downloaded the book and joined my mailing list, so thank you for that. And I'm guessing the reason why you downloaded the book is because you're experiencing some degree of burnout in your life. And sadly, you are not alone, because up to 80% of us are experiencing some degree of burnout. And unfortunately, it is one of the most underdiagnosed illnesses. So this video is going to be an important video if you are experiencing some degree of burnout, because it will equip you with two very important strategies that will help you to recover from burnout. So why should I be giving you this advice? Well, I've actually recovered from burnout myself. 10 years ago, I got to the stage where I was pretty close to dying. My burnout was so severe that I really had trouble walking, I had trouble functioning, I had anxiety that was off the charts, I had brain fog that was just debilitating. I had chest pains every time I tried to walk. So my burnout was extreme. It did really get to a very life-threatening stage. But I have, over the last 10 years, developed some proven strategies with lots of research to back it up, which have really helped me, and I have helped many other people with these strategies. So the first thing we're going to do is have a quick little chat about cortisol and the impact that chronic stress has on your body. So we'll start with that. So when you're experiencing stress from any source, and it doesn't matter where the source is, and some of the sources of stress will actually surprise you. So we can experience stress from our thinking. If we're a perfectionist, or we're continually pushing ourselves, or we're continually thinking and overthinking and worrying, that activates our stress response. Other things that activate our stress response are things like being hungry, being too hot, being too cold, being dehydrated, underslept, suffering. If you're not getting enough sleep, that will activate your stress response. Having constant respiratory infections are a very, very big activation to our stress response and will drain our adrenal glands. So there are literally millions of things that can activate our stress response. And some of them we have control over, others we don't. Some of it's our perception of what's happening in the world. For example, our worry and our thoughts, we can change that. Whereas things like being too hot or too cold, or being exposed to electromagnetic frequencies or things like that, we don't have as much control over. But all of those things will activate our stress response. So what happens when our stress response is activated? Well, initially we produce adrenaline to help our body cope with the threat. And then after a very short period of time, if the threat is still there, in which most cases it is, our body starts to produce cortisol. Because cortisol is the main hormone that helps us cope with all stress from all sources and many other functions, which I'll talk about. So initially, when you're exposed to the stress, your body has to produce increased amounts of the hormone cortisol to give you energy to cope with the threat. Now, if you're consistently producing higher amounts of cortisol, this has very damaging effects. It damages our brain. It's linked to osteoporosis. It's linked to weight gain, obesity and diabetes. It's linked to chronic illness and definitely to insomnia. So producing too high amounts of cortisol over time, and it weakens your immune system, really weakens your immune system, has very serious effects. Now, unfortunately, what happens, and this is what happened to me, and this is what leads to burnout, and this is what happens to many people, is if you keep pushing yourself and exposing yourself to chronic stress over time, what happens is your body just can't keep up producing that amount of cortisol, so it struggles. And you start to experience producing declining levels of cortisol. So your cortisol levels get lower and lower. Now, once they get lower and lower, it's actually very serious. And if you're at that stage, you're probably on some sort of spectrum of being extremely tired, like absolutely no energy whatsoever. Despite sleeping, despite all the things that you're doing, you're just dead tired. So that is one of the main symptoms. But other symptoms include you getting every cough and cold and respiratory virus are going around. You're sick for longer because you need normal levels of cortisol to mount an immune response and to recover from all disease. So if you've got declining levels of cortisol, your body will find it hard to fight all disease, and you're more likely to succumb to what's going around as well. Now you also need normal cortisol levels to experience normal blood sugar levels. Cortisol is intimately connected with keeping our blood sugar at a normal level. So you're more likely to be experiencing really horrible episodes of hypoglycemia, where your brain is foggy, where you feel really anxious, you could be shaky. And hypoglycemia is not a nice situation. You can't think properly, and a lot of times you just have to sit down and rest when you're experiencing these horrible symptoms. But if you have normal levels of cortisol, your body finds it much easier to keep your body's blood glucose levels in the normal range. So experiencing high levels of cortisol is extremely damaging to the body, and also experiencing declining levels is extremely damaging to the body. So let's get into, and you can read a lot more about that in my book, From Broken to Beautiful. I have a comprehensive coverage of that. So let's talk about what are the two main strategies that I would recommend that you really focus on right now if you're experiencing any degree of adrenal fatigue. Now, the first one is sleep. You really need to get to a stage where you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours every night, and preferably before 10 p.m. because your body does most of its recharging from 10 p.m. to 1 p.m. If you're not sleeping properly, this is a very big stress to the body. It has to activate your stress response to produce more cortisol. So if you're consistently getting less sleep, you will be consistently either producing more cortisol, and if you've got declining levels of cortisol, your body's going to find that very difficult, and it's going to use up some of your precious cortisol, which means that you're more likely to be getting more coughs and colds, and it means your fatigue will be worse. So getting your sleep is really important. Getting your sleep right is the most important thing, because if you don't get your sleep right, unfortunately, whatever else you do will help, but it won't be as beneficial unless you get your sleep right. Now, I have lots and lots of proven tips in my book, which you can read. So this video is too short to go into those things, but read my book, you've got it, and you'll get the tips how to sleep and some recommended supplements that you can take to help you. So get your sleep right. Make it a priority. Make it something that you value. I value my sleep. I make it a priority, and it has really paid off. Now, the second thing is you really need to get your food and eating right. A lot of people with adrenal fatigue are living on coffee and energy bars and pick-me-ups, and unfortunately, they are the absolute wrong things to be eating. They will actually make your cortisol levels even decline even further, making your adrenal fatigue even worse. Now, why does it do that? If you're eating things like coffee and high, what we call glycemic index foods, high sugar foods, you'll get a quick burst of sugar, and then you have to have quite a bit of insulin in your body to deal with that high level of sugar, and the high levels of insulin actually cause your blood sugars to crash. So then you go into the hypoglycemia range, and then you're experiencing more brain fog, energy crashes, mood swings, bloating, pain, all those horrible symptoms because you're eating the wrong type of foods. What you need to do to keep your cortisol levels more normal is you need to eat every 3 hours. I can't state how important it is to eat every 3 hours, because when you're suffering some degree of adrenal fatigue or burnout, you can't push yourself and wait 6 hours. You can't skip meals. You can't do those type of things because your blood sugar will drop, and you need cortisol to increase your blood sugar. So if your blood sugar drops because you're pushing yourself, skipping meals, not making a priority of eating healthy foods every 3 hours, then you're going to be experiencing hypoglycemia, and it's going to be using up the cortisol. Because as I just said, and I'll say it again, your body needs to produce cortisol to increase your blood sugars, because it controls the energy reserves in your body. So it's really important that you eat healthy foods which contain some protein, some healthy fats that don't promote inflammation, and some low glycemic index